How's your day going?
It's you know what? It's really not that bad. I've been running around, doing the things that I know I'm supposed to be doing, so that I can do the things that I want to do. So now I get to do the things that I want to do, like talk to you about stuff.
I appreciate that, man. Um, all right. So, what do you want to get into today, man?
Well, so the last thing I talked to you about while I was running around, was the an old sort of idea that I had about, well, the Tiger King experience, or the
Yeah.
Tiger King experiment, and how Netflix played into all of this early stuff at the very beginning of this the pandemic back in March of last year.
Yeah.
So, by the way, I have no like real evidence to back up anything that I'm going to say.
Yeah. O-
So,
Okay.
all
You're,
right.
you're just basically saying your opinions and theories. So, I respect it.
Yeah. So if you look at the very beginning of this thing, when this was really starting to kick off, when people knew there, not only became aware that there was a virus, but it was coming, and we were told to prepare for the worst, batten down the hatches, all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
The end is here. So
Yeah.
Netflix releases a documentary that was produced by Bill Gates called Pandemic at the very beginning of this. Just happened to come out while everyone is stuck at home, right? So right off the bat, everyone is afraid of whatever is coming, because Bill Gates and all of these virus specialists from the World Health Organization, that they're going to get to know really well really soon, are telling them that the end of the world is here, right? And that
Yeah.
it's going to come from a wet market, and it's all bad stuff. Immediately after that, we get Tiger King. It's almost as if they knew that they had to give us something that was going to thrash our brains. The early stages of this of these lockdowns, when people are stuck at home and they can't do squat, cannabis sales, liquor sales, anything that you
So,
did for advice,
uh,
sales went through
uh,
the roof.
yeah, 100%, 100%. Bro, through the roof. To the point they just legalized cannabis in Virginia, the first certain southern state. Yeah, they just legalized cannabis in Virginia, and that's the first southern state to legalize cannabis.
Well, Oklahoma.
Is Oklahoma a southern state?
I A discussion that can be had. It borders Texas. I would define that as a southern state. Um,
Well, that's good for them. I mean, like that's good for both of them. I forgot that Oklahoma did that, but I was just reading about Virginia. Yeah, that's good for them because I know in the South they fighting a little bit harder for marijuana to be legal because all those private prisons that benefit off locking people up from it.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think that there's a lot of conversations to be had. Now, my understanding is that in California, there are programs for folks that were locked up with cannabis convictions to become licensed distributors, licensed retailers, licensed cultivators.
and they, and they should have that all across the board because the
Agreed.
idea of cannabis being illegal was just it was absurd from the beginning. It should have never happened. We should never be where we're at with cannabis right now.
Well, the other discussion is, what about other drugs? Like, are those things that we should consider legalizing, or those things that we should consider decriminalizing? Like in Oregon, they've decriminalized. My understanding is they've decriminalized everything as far as like personal use.
And you saw, and it's interesting because I have homeboys in a different country, and speaking about Oregon, like in different places where they legalize everything, the crime always drops. Like things become less violent. Like yeah, people gonna do what they gonna do, but it's just not like if someone's gonna do cocaine in my neighborhood, I'd rather have them be able to get it from a store, manufacture legally, besides get it from someone that's having little girls fly in with on planes and cut open their breasts on table and getting it from that. You know what I mean? If you're gonna get it from some cocoa leaf grower naturally, I don't really care. Like, I'm not judging people's vices or anything like that. But if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. Yeah. I think the government should stay out of people's bedrooms and people's bodies personally. But I do think that like I'm not for like crystal meth being legal. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no medical aspect to crystal meth. Like opiates, there's a medical aspect to it. You know, even though I don't agree with a lot of it, there's still a medical aspect to it. But crystal meth and like I think fentanyl should still be regulated by the government because the average person doesn't know what the hell they're doing when they get a hold of it, and it's so easy to overdose off of it. But that's only like two drugs that I got like problems with.
Well, methamphetamines themselves have been used forever. The pilots have called them go pills. Like you've got a guy that's got to fly, a 23-hour flight or a 26-hour flight. I don't want him getting a little bit tired. I want him to be dialed in on super Adderall and figuring out like what he needs to do with what he's got.
Well, that makes sense.
So, I know that, different cultures, different things. But as far as like amphetamines go, like everything that is manufactured was manufactured with a purpose. So, like there was someone who was cranking out the crank, and it's like we've got something here that could. There are dudes that work 20 hours a day and don't sleep because they're consistently working, they're consistently cranking something out, no pun intended. But that's just the way that they operate. They don't sleep, and this amphetamines are a tool that they use to not sleep so that they can get more done.
You're 100% right about that. I just think I just don't want it to be like Pablo Escobar drug dealers run our country and shit like that, and they're blowing up hospitals when they're beefing. Like that's that's what I just don't want. Like, I don't care what people do. Like, and speaking of drugs, this actually goes into the other topic that we were talking about. And I want to say this real quick. R.I.P. to DMX. R.I.P. to DMX. We lost the GOAT. We lost the legend, and I want to talk about this, highlight like the impact this man has had on people's lives, the positivity he spread, and just showing that no matter how much you fall, you can get back up, and you shouldn't be judged by how much you fall, but how you stand up. Because DMX struggled with drugs himself. He never hid that. You know what I mean? And he always preached like a positive message and stuff like that. Like, anyone I've known a lot of people that met him. I've never met him personally, but like, I don't know anyone that had said, DMX was a bad vibe, or, he was like a bad person, or was a negative dude, or, you know what I mean? So it's sad to see, DMX go like this.
Now, are you familiar with the media takeout article that was published yesterday?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so citing anonymous sources, DMX received COVID vaccine days before heart attack. Family says no drugs.
I read. Yeah, actually, I take that back. I saw that on my homeboy's page, and how I felt about it was like, I don't know if it's like conspiracy theories of people going against the vaccines or whatever. But we all know DMX had a drug problem.
And far be it for me to put a lot of faith into anonymous sources on a gossip web. Yeah. It's not like I've done it before. No, it's one of my favorite sources of information, because a lot of times media takeout will get it right. Sometimes I'm sure they're making shit up as they go along. But nonetheless, I can't prove that they are. I can't prove that they aren't. They do seem to be the only source that is reporting this.
But Yeah, everyone I'm seeing is talking about a OD. OD. But they're not talking specifically what he OD'd off of, which it leads a gray area for articles like that to run around and do their thing and create. But it's I don't like the fact that only thing I mean RIP DMX. I don't like the fact that he passed, but I don't like the fact that I don't know. I saw some articles just being straight negative about his death, and it was like all the homes he lost from drug addiction and stuff like that. And like I don't understand. Like I feel like even if you have a problem with a person, like if they died, your problem should be over because they're dead. You can't do anything about what they done to you, like whatever. You need to let it go. Like it's death. You know what I mean? It's the permanent end all be all. And I feel like people that pick on people that are dead, especially like you're not giving it a week or a family to mourn or no time, and you just like as soon as they drop, you saying negative stuff. I feel like those people were a lot of aspects are cowards because you couldn't say that when that person was around, and you're waiting at the most vulnerable moment to be combative, which I don't respect. If you dig through anyone's past, I don't care who it is. If you dig through anyone's fast enough, you can find a reason to throw dirt on their name. But when people die, it's more people that's being affected than just that person that died. Like there's a whole family and stuff like that. Even though I don't agree with a lot of the with the British with the British Empire or kingdom, what a royal family has done when it comes to like other, we can go on a long rant of what they've done to like other places and other countries, but I feel like when people die, like you should need to at least give it a week or a couple of days before you go in on somebody.
Fair enough. But that's not the reality. Is that's not the world that we live in with the media. A lot of them kind of thrive and dwell on negativity. Like if the media was forced to be honest, just as honest about the good news as they are about the bad news, the news would look a whole lot different. It's easier to talk about the ugliness of someone's life, especially if they died, or the perception is that they died in an ugly way. Now it's easier. Now I'm not saying that he died after receiving the vaccine. After reading the article, like I read the article, I didn't just read the headlines.
Yeah, okay.
Apparently he had been vaccinated because he wanted to hit the road. He wanted to do shows. Now, also doing some research, I saw that previously DMX had checked himself into rehab before he had a relapse. So like he's clearly had been making good decisions in the past. And I like you said, I don't know the man. I've never met the man. I had zero interaction with him. But he had shown in the past the ability to make a better decision than he would have previously, right?
100%.
Um,
100%.
he was preparing to do shows. Like he wanted to get, if he was getting a vaccine so that he could hit the road, DMX could probably still get $20,000 for a one-off show, easy.
Man, easy. And like I was reading on all this stuff when he died. I was reading on all the stuff in my Instagram. Like he did a lot of features. Like he was about to come out hot again. Like he did a lot of features with a lot of young cats. He done, he got a song with Pop Smoke, I heard, and he got a song with Young Blue, song with Hitmaker. Like he was like about to try to turn up one good last time. And I watched the Drink Champs podcast with Noriega a lot, and like one of his last interviews was on there. So it seemed like his mind was in the right place. You know what I mean? So
I
RIP to D. I grew up on his music, man. Like that, like Party Up, Slip and Fall, Can't Get Up, all these hit records. Like I remember the year he dropped 2 albums, and that was absurd in hip hop to drop 2 albums in a year. And that was, everyone's calling him crazy, but he went platinum twice.
so what was the first song you heard that you were like, okay, I'm on to DMX?
Uh, I was a fan of like the Rough Riders and the Hot Boys stuff when I was younger, and it was that stop, drop, shut them down, open up shop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was that. When I first heard that, I was like, "Yo, this is cool." And like also being like having a Southern family, we didn't listen to a lot of East Coast rap, but everyone like loved DMX, no matter if it was East Coast or South or West Coast. Like everyone loved DMX, and like he really brought East Coast rap all over the world, and he wasn't hating on rap in different areas and stuff like that. So you know, that's what I remember from DMX. And I got like I have homeboys that have all his albums. I can't say I bought all his albums, but I bought a lot of them.
So I was about 13 or 14 years old. I caught a DMX song on a sampler. Record labels used to put out samplers, and I believe this
Yeah.
was a Sony sampler because I believe he was on Rough House at the time. But this song was called "Born Loser," and I'll include a link down at the bottom. But it was very young, and not even very young, but like he was always older. It seemed to be older than everybody, right? But not like old. I don't know. He was like 28 or 29 when "It's Dark and Hell Is Hot" came out, which was ancient for rappers at the time.
He broke a lot of stereotypes because even though he was that old, like the record labels could ignore how hot DMX was. You know what I mean? DMX was going like I just posted on one of his shows, and it was literally like overseas, and people were mosh pitting, and it looked like a presidential event, like how many people was in the audience, and that's what DMX shows was like. Like people came out for DMX shows.
So the first video was "Get at Me, Dog," and it was shot in the tunnel on a Sunday night, and it's black and white, and it's like crazy, but it was a live performance. Now Leor Cohen, I believe it was Leor Cohen, was talking about like when he first heard and first saw DMX, it was like a studio battle, and DMX had a broken jaw, and he was rapping with his broken jaw, and he was just da 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 da, and it was like nothing else. I've been thinking about this a lot because we had a good week to really listen to DMX again, because I hadn't listened to DMX in easily months. It was gym music, but it wasn't anything that I had listened to a lot on a regular basis, but I've been going through and listening to it a lot, and it was heavy metal for kids that listen to rap.
Yeah, it was.
It was if you listen to Southern hip hop at the time, and you needed heavy bass, and you needed hi hats, and you needed 808s, and you needed these really crisp like Southern snares. It had all of that because on one hand you had Dame Grease doing these nasty, sinister horror movie, stop being greedy type beats, and then you had Swizz Beatz, who was I still don't have a great appreciation for Swiss at that time, but those were rock songs, but Southern rap songs, and it made DMX a star because DMX was just that good.
Yeah, DMX was amazing, bro. Anyone, when it comes to hip hop and what he's done for hip hop, you cannot take nothing away from that man. Like, there have been so many rappers that wouldn't be here if it wasn't for DMX, Jadakiss, The Lox, East Coast rap. Period. You know what I mean? Like he made and also his stage performance. You know, they're still talking about what he did at the Apollo and the prayer at the end, and he cried and made the whole audience cry. Like people talk about that story when it comes to DMX. Like every year I hear that story.
That the Woodstock performance.
Yes.
Yeah, these are things that we're probably never going to see, and these are things that a lot of people have never seen. I don't think that you have guys like Killer Mike coming out the way they come out without DMX coming out a few years before them the way he came out. He came out as a one-man heavy metal band. He was Korn, but one dude. He was
he was he was corny with one dude, man. And like, yeah, that's you know what? That's a perfect like that is a perfect branch off the DMX tree when you said Killer Mike. That's a good because that reminds me like he is his age, but the youth and older people still love them.
the bark now. Like Killer Mike has one of the greatest deliveries, and he's got 73 different deliveries. But DMX was a Ozzy Osbourne. He was any great rock singer. He was any great male lead vocalist, and he's gonna be missed. What he was able to do, what he did, okay, from from a very traumatic upbringing, and that's the other. I mean, there's a lot that can be said about DMX's life, and if we just talk about the things that he did and that he accomplished, and that he didn't just open doors, but he like set them, he kicked them down, he came through with an axe, and he let everyone in behind him. And he didn't see
Yeah,
that was
100%.
You were 100% right when you start talking about Jada Kiss. Would any members of the Lox still be making music if not for DMX? And there's a lot of conversations that can be had about what he was able to do with Rough Riders and Rough Riders management behind them. That maybe they would have just gone the way of Craig. No, rest in peace to Craig Mack. Maybe Carl Thomas would be another a better name, but they could have disappeared into the ether if not for DMX and Rough Riders management. Now we can talk about the impact of the Rough Riders Motorcycle Club. That was
Jesus Christ. That my uncle was a Rough Rider and he died on a motorcycle, so it's a huge thing.
I have buddies from the military that were Rough Riders, are Rough Riders. If I'm not mistaken, there's a Rough Riders chapter in Anchorage.
There might be, but like the Rough Riders brand is international.
Yeah,
it's international. We can go to anywhere overseas and they're talking about hip hop. There's a couple people that there's a couple logos you're going to see. You're going to see a Snoop Dogg shirt. Someone's going to be wearing a Snoop Dogg shirt. I don't care. Wait, someone's going to be wearing a Snoop Dogg shirt. You're going to see some form of Rough Rider merchandise somewhere. And you're going to see a Wu-Tang logo.
In the 90s, you would also see Cypress Hill and Ice Cube. So you're
you would definitely see
that. Right. So I grew up in Germany, and DMX in the clubs, like that was the craziest thing. Is this dude could say the most violent shit, he said some fucking terrible things about people. You're whack, you're twisted, your girl's a hoe, you're broke, the kid ain't yours, and everybody know your old man thinks you're stupid. You be like, I love my baby mother. I never let her.
I'll never let her go. That shit was so cold. That shit was so cold.
He said the meanest shit. And it was
that shit was so cold.
We're gonna have a good time to this man saying fucked up shit. And we did. And a great time was had by all.
Yeah, we did. But you can't keep him mad because he kept it so real. We all know some guy that's whipped over his girl and it's fucking up his life. Even his parents know that he's stupid. He made music like that, and it was like DMX was a blessing for us. He said the stuff that was on people's minds, but they were scared to say.
I don't think it was just that. I think that he and guys like Sugar Free also gave young people advice they weren't going to get from their parents. Like when he had that line about you're whack, you're twisted, your girl's a hoe, like that spoke to me at the time. Because like young Bill was falling in love with anything that was like, Bill, we should, do the thing. But yeah. And that included some ladies who had lovely ladies who were very good to me and good to lots of other folks. I'm
I
not mad.
feel it. I feel it. We all grow up sometimes, and man, DMX said a lot of just he has storytelling ability. Like DMX was like, and DMX one day he was a rapper's rapper, and he was one of those rappers that rappers love to run up and rap to. Because if you rapped in front of DMX and he said you dope, oh you dope. Because DMX was never scared to call someone whack.
Are you familiar with a guy by the name of Defari? So Defari was Exhibit's hype man, but he was also a teacher. He was also an educator. He had a master's degree, and so when he spoke, I would listen. And he said that a really good MC is someone that can take a complex idea and simplify it. X would do that, but then X would do it from two different perspectives. So, for example, Stop Being Greedy, which we've talked about a lot, is a perfect example. On his first single, the B-side to like his first real single as DMX for Get At Me Dog, is him rhyming from two different perspectives from a split personality. And he wasn't using complicated terms. A lot of rappers at the time were like Cannabis, where they would try and fit these huge big words and complex battle raps. DMX would just talk about fucking you up, but from three different perspectives. But Stop Being Greedy he took a complex idea, and we talked about it being, you mentioned specifically him being an international guy. The lyrics weren't super complicated. If you're learning English in Germany or in France, these other places where learning English is mandatory in school, you learn that as a study tool. Like that's not super complicated. You're not hearing, a dude breaking down a lot of syllables. It's not tough, but the concept is something that, because we all love action movies, we all like horror stories, at least at a time in our lives. And DMX spoke to that, but DMX spoke to it in a way that lots of people understood. And it was, you could listen to it if you were a kid in Sweden and you were going through some shit there, and this is what's playing in the background, or you're in Russia, or you're in Japan, and you're learning English anyway. This is a guy telling action stories, and you can kind of understand what he's saying and what he's talking about. He was an action hero. He was a rock star. He was an action hero. He was, in my opinion, very much one of the best acting rappers. That was his talent that I think that people forget about when they talk about him. I mean, he was a very talented man, but he was an incredible actor.
Yeah, he was an incredible actor too. I love Belly. I still watch Belly to this day, like it dropped out, man. Romeo Must Die, Belly. That's my shit right there. Those were good movies. Those were good actors acting well with a good script and nice camera shots. That was art.
The joint with Jet Li, like, and not just Romeo Must Die. Like, he was cool. Like, there were times that he played, like, no one else could have been Tommy in Belly. No one else could have been Tommy. Like, it could have only been DMX.
He's gonna be missed, man. I don't know how his his rights situation are going out from his music, or because he died with like 15 kids.
Yeah, but I mean, how many of them are like, adults? I know he's got a young one, Exodus, with his fiance. And I'm sure, here's the thing, is I'm sure they will be well taken care of. I am positive DMX will be well taken care of. So remember that he did a versus last year against Snoop, and if you performed in versus, you get like an ownership stake in the company now. His family has money. I'm sure his child will be taken care of.
That's good.
I would assume so.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's a heavy blow for hip hop, man, because it's one of those guys that, like, when the OGs start talking to the young cats about what's real hip hop, that was one of the figures they would bring up, and like that's one of the guys that the young cats would all agree with. DMX was like, if you wanted to know what rapping was, or how to perform, or how to be an MC and captivate an audience, DMX.
I think there are certain watermarks, right? Like, and this is in any form of music. In rock and roll, there's like let's say Nirvana's Nevermind, and then a few years later, you have some other genre redefining album that's in that line of work, right? But DMX is one of those watermarks. In any time, in any club, on any coast, in any country, and you can throw on a handful of DMX records. You can throw on a handful of Run DMC records. You can throw on a handful of Jay-Z records.
He definitely. Actually has the number one song. He has the number one song on Apple Music right now.
As he should. What is it?
Rough Riders Anthem.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Rough Riders Anthem. Yeah, but
lots of people are just
that's a clap. The next second one is Party Up, but yeah, the DMX is good music, man. You can't go wrong with the DMX album. I don't know if DMX had ever dropped any weak bodies of work.
I think that some things didn't necessarily hit the mark the way they were supposed to. Grand Champ, I think, is one of my favorite records. Yeah, We're Right Here is probably, that's probably my favorite. We right here, we're not going anywhere. We right here. God.
That shit was hard. That shit is hard, actually.
Like,
man, but I just want to know whether. Sorry, keep going.
I've been listening. I mean, there was a lot of very dark stuff as well. Damien, The Omen with Marilyn Manson. I mean, he touched on a lot of dark and ugly topics that weren't really touched on in rap music, not the way that he did. The Gravediggers kind of touched on. I mean, the Gravediggers touched on some dark stuff, but not the way that DMX did.
I remember when church folks wasn't fucking with DMX. I remember that was that they were riled up by that. What's the Hell is Dark and Hell? What's the Hell is Dark and Hell is Hot album? What
Dark and Hell is Hot? Yeah, because he had
they were
on there with where he's talking to the devil. Now, fast forward to that second album that year, The Omen with Marilyn Manson.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I don't like a lot of Marilyn Manson songs, but that one was hot. I can't even front of that was a really, really, really good one. But speaking of DMX, let's just say because he had a drug history. Let's just say if he did die from an overdose from drug use, or you know what I mean, do you think that's gonna start a conversation in hip hop where drug use needs to be talked about with these labels? They go into these neighborhoods and he signed these kids that a lot of times never had a job. You know what I mean? And if they did have a job, it was literally entry level. They give them an opportunity to make millions and millions of dollars, party all the time, and there's no really like big homie or guidance to tell them how to handle their money, drugs, or women. Do you think like hip hop needs like a union or like a class or like something for like the people that's on the come up like that?
I don't think that it's just hip hop. I think that the drug use is across all genres, because any form of music, right? Any form of art or entertainment, if you have young folks who are getting their asses kissed on a regular basis with an excess of money that they've never learned how to handle, they don't have any mentors. They don't have anyone looking out for them. Maybe they've got a manager, but their manager might be a piece of shit. It's a lot of that stuff is the job of a good manager, but unfortunately, a lot of these kids don't have good managers. Now, DMX's story about coming into contact with crack is really tragic. But as far as a lot of these kids getting hooked on, on opiates, whether it's lean, whether it's um, 15 other things that they can get their hands on. Yeah, I think that's a problem across genres. I think that maybe you see it less in a lot of family-run businesses in the music industry, and you'll see that more in R&B and sometimes you'll see it in pop and rock, where you see like there's a brother foundation. There are actual legitimate brothers that are together versus 16 kids that just kind of know each other. Then you've got different personalities and 16 people with their own idea of the way things are going. However, if you've got a strong personality, like you've got a father or mother team there supporting you, you might be able to make it out okay. But a lot of these kids are getting their asses kissed by a producer, by a production company, by this person or that person, by sometimes, a lot of times, by their fucking parents. It's their parents controlling everything from their image to the music that is being written. And it's the parents. It's like shitty parents who force their kids to be athletes so that they can live off of whatever glory that they failed as a person.
That makes a lot of sense. I just think education when it comes to drugs, because drugs is not an entertainment problem. Drugs is a worldwide. It's not a race issue. It's not an age thing. It's not a sex thing. It's not a political thing. Drugs are out there, and drug abuse. I don't think drugs is a problem, but I think drug abuse is a problem and it needs to be talked about more in school. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like education is the key to solve a lot of these problems we have. And I feel like a lot of parents, when they send their kids to school, they be so uncomfortable of the idea of their child growing up. They don't want their child in the sexual education class because they ain't ready for it, or they don't want their child in the drug education class because it's too real, and they don't want, you know what I mean? They want to keep their baby a baby. But you got to understand, you should rather have your child be educated the proper way, besides, like, God forgive me, I don't want to disrespect no one, but like no one wants to be like I don't want my child to be finessed like DMX was by his best friend. The first time he tried crack was his friend finessed him to smoke it.
Yeah. You don't want to, you don't want your parents, or you don't want your kids educated by people who don't have their best interest in mind.
100%.
And so the other problem that we have is that we end up relying on teachers to be the educators of things that maybe should be taught in home because parents are uncomfortable. Well, we don't want to talk to our kids about sex, so we're going to rely on public education, which we don't trust anyway, to give our kids the very best information on sex, the conversation we don't want to have with them. Same thing with drugs, with any other complicated decision. So that you're kind of, as a parent, you're left at the mercy of whatever the curriculum says or whatever this teacher says, which may be 100% different from what you as a parent want your kid to be taught. And educate them with the information you want them educated with.
I agree with that, but I understand. I want it still in school because it gives a chance for people to be educated that their parents are not educating. I think educated parents and parents that got their shit together, they gonna talk to their kids regardless. Like, I'm not worried about those parents. They know what the fuck they're doing. But you gotta understand, like, most parents are not. It took me a while. Well, I knew when I started growing up, like I was blessed to have good parents. And I realized real quick that most people don't have good parents. And a lot of parents are deadbeats. A lot of parents don't really care. So like, I don't want to take that out of the school system because it gives a chance that that people are not being educated can be educated. So it's like one of those be damned if we do and be damned if we don't. But like if we're talking about stats and numbers, every school that has sexual education, it the pregnancy rate goes down, the STD rate go down when they try to keep it private, sexual education private, or a couple people can be educated. That's when they got to come into the school and have an auditorium meeting and be like, yo, the clap has been spreading through the school, you know what I mean? And we need to clean this up because it's getting real now, you know what I mean? It's like, we got to fix this. So
is that what high
I
school
feel
is
education.
in Anchorage?
What?
Is that what high school is like in Anchorage?
That's what high school like in a lot of areas, but also in Anchorage they had a problem with that. A couple people had clap burning, going to the clinic and stuff like that, to the point where we're gonna have to talk about this, or you know what I mean, like, or you can get someone seriously hurt, or you know what I mean, because people want to look the other way. So I feel like it's a damn if we do, a damn if we don't situation. But I feel like education is key, and it's still like I rather have like education be there for that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I'm with you 100%. I think that's, if you're 15 or 16, that's an awkward assembly to have.
Man, kids are fucking way younger than that these days. Kids, man,
100%, 100%.
yeah,
But if you're just a regular sophomore, like that's an awkward conversation to have with everybody. But yeah, kids are going to be kids, and um, if if you don't, if you're not educating them, like whatever the risk could be, whether it's a vehicle accident, or it's a teen pregnancy, whatever it could be, if you're not preparing your children for it, then they're gonna figure it out in the real world, and that can be a lot less forgiving.
yeah, and all that 100%. But also, it's like I ain't gonna lie. Speaking of rap music, my parents taught me about sex. When it came time period like that, thank God they did. But I ain't gonna lie, I was an Ice Cube fan. I remember I was an Ice Cube fan, and he had a song about like wearing a condom. You know what I'm talking about?
Jimmy hats, have you ever seen?
Yeah. But do you know how many people come to Ice Cube and be like, "Hey, you saved me on this," and he saved me on that. Where he saved me on that because I started like for a while I didn't have condoms. Then I started like having condoms. Like I was still having sex, but I was having condoms. Because Ice Cube rap song and how he was pointing out and breaking it down, it made it seem like, yeah, this is the smartest choice because you don't want to end up with no ratchet baby mama, or you know what I mean, or stuff like that. And he kept it real. And sometimes kids need to hear that. And I think rap music has a good balance these days, but I think we glorify more things than other. But I wish we would I wish we would turn up as much as we would educate.
I think there's some really good music out, whether it's hip hop, whether it's shit. There's all kinds of really good music coming out, and I think there's a lot of garbage as well.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I mean, but that's
And
every genre and every generation, we always have garbage.
oh,
So
100%, 100%. I think that people get wrapped up into the nostalgia of old music that they have a hard time looking for new stuff, or they're so wrapped up in what an artist did 15 years ago, or 8 years ago, or 20 years ago, that they neglect what the artist is doing now. And sometimes these artists are making great stuff, and sometimes it's not as good as it used to be. What do you have for new music? Tell me what you would recommend for someone who is looking. Let's say someone likes DMX. Who would they like that is newer? And then how do we define new?
I don't know. DMX, I can sense like I listen to DMX. I sense like a lot of rappers that come off the DMX tree. I hear Kendrick. I hear a lot of Kendrick when I hear DMX. Like the aggressiveness when he raps. I would recommend like Section 80 to any young person if they want to listen to a good hip hop album. Section 80. I would recommend ooh, If you want to listen to some older stuff that's good and they like DMX, I would recommend Dead Presidents. Yeah, I definitely recommend Dead Presidents. If they wanted, I would definitely recommend like the Locks albums. I would also, if you wanted something more modern and was young person, Flatbush Zombies. Flatbush Zombies is amazing. They don't get enough credit, but they definitely deserve it. And also, who else? If it was like DMX, now I'm trying to match it up. Little TJ from New York, he got some good stuff. My girl put me on to him. And the last new album I listened to was weird. It was Demi Lovato's. Was not that bad.
Demi Lovato lost me when she said when she compared her survivor's guilt. She said, "What happened to DMX could have happened to me."
Yeah, I was like, see, that's. Now I was like, man, just I can go on. Yeah, I feel you on that. Like that, when I heard that, like you had that connection right there. You had that same look on your face when you said that, and I had the same look because like when she said that, like I don't like people taking tragedy and trying to make it about them. Like this ain't your moment right now. Like you had your moment, and you can go back to your moment, but this ain't your moment right now. And one thing I don't understand like how is Demi Lovato is put on a pedestal for her recovery when I remember the media was tearing down Whitney Houston every second they had. I remember they were tearing down Whitney Houston, and it didn't seem like the media doesn't have the same viciousness towards Demi Lovato when she's done more drugs and she's been caught up way more and she's way more situations and everything. And I don't know, I feel like the media is biased, and I biased in a lot of ways.
Oh, I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. Um, and we
and
treat
plus,
we treat
and
people whose opinions maybe we shouldn't care about like we like they matter. Like at the end of the day, she's still an entertainer that made some really bad decisions, right? And these are all kinds of entertainers who have made some very bad decisions. Um, However, they were entertainers that were also relatively young when they were introduced to some pretty traumatic stuff. And we should all give them a little bit of respect, but I they tore down Whitney. You are
they tore
100% right. They yes. And
they
they
didn't give
made
her a
her
chance to they didn't give her a chance to recover like they gave Demi Lovato a chance to recover. There was on everything was a crack joke. Even when she was on interviews, they made it seem like she was like strung out all the time, like she didn't have no feeling, like all she cared about was crack, and like what I mean, like
they
they
made her a freak show.
really did tear it. What?
They made her a freak show. The
Yeah, you did.
reality TV show with Bobby Brown, they made it a spectacle. Now I get it that she signed on and she agreed, but we talked about you also mentioned like a union or someone to look after the artist. That is clear evidence that there's nobody looking after the artist. There
What?
are a lot of people saying yes. There are a lot of people that aren't saying no. Maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe that's a bad idea. And how much of that is the artist's responsibility? Because at some point there may or may not have been somebody there to give them some advice.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one, but also that was the era. That was the era of like reality TV was kind of starting to get popular, and people were looking for investments and people to sign on deals. But I just feel like no one took that businessman to a side and was like, "Hey, I don't think you need to put this person on TV right now. Like they not physically healthy or mentally healthy to be on TV. Because if you're gonna be on TV and have cameras follow you right there, your mind got to be in the right place. And you just putting the camera on someone like that, it's gonna get dramas and ratings, but it's also gonna make you look at that business person like, so this is what you're trying to do for entertainment.
At the end of the day, right? at the end of the day, whether it's Whitney Houston or it's Demi Lovato or it's DMX or it's Prince Andrew or it's um, whoever it is, right? In the end, right? If we're talking about drug use, well, maybe not so much with Prince Phillips, except for adrenochrome. That's a whole other conversation. Ultimately, like these are still grown-ups that made decisions, right? Um, and there's in the case of Whitney Houston and DMX and John Belushi and Lenny Bruce and all these other brilliant artists that we've lost to addiction to drug use, like it leaves this void, right? I watched a performance of My Guitar Gently Weeps, and it was Prince and Tom Petty and a whole bunch of other folks, right? But it was a moment that ultimately, because of drug overdoses, um, we don't get to have these moments anymore. I don't have like a Jerry Springer type final thought, but like these are people that we're going to miss, and if you think you need help, you need help.
Yeah, well, I think I speaking on the urban community, I think for a while it was like it was cool to do drugs, but it was not cool to get help. For a long time, like people would I'm on the phone. People would glorify drug use, but they would shame them for being in rehab. They would. That's when people would start looking at you funny. But when you catch them in the club, turned up, or doing whatever in the street on camera, you think it's lit. But when they to a point of, they foaming at the mouth and they trying to get help, you don't really want to rock with them no more. And another actually celebrity, thank God that he didn't die, but drug issues and drug problems, famous Dex. He had a IG where he was really strung out, and he was signed to his best friend Rich Kid, and when Rich Kid saw him, he did a video of taking him to rehab, and he didn't do that to show off, but he did that I'm going to support you. You know what I mean? Like, we need to make going to rehab and getting clean just as cool as we did as it is getting high, and I respect that.
Robert Downey Jr., another example. Like you can have a lot of fun Googling the trouble that Robert Downey Jr. got in for drugs in the early 90s. Like he had a lot of fun getting into a lot of trouble, and he's a guy who cleaned up, who sobered up, who went to jail, who fucked up. Yeah, none of this is fun. Like withdrawals aren't fun, I'm sure.
I'm sure, like, choking on your vomit and dying from it is not fun either.
No. I'm sure that if you asked Jimi Hendrix how much fun that was, I'm sure he would tell you that it wasn't a lot of fun.
He probably regret it, you know what I mean? But that's the thing about death, you can't. There's no rewind button on death. When you're gone, you're gone. And I would like anyone that's hearing this podcast that if you think about getting help, there's a lot of Google hotlines, and you should get it. And you shouldn't be ashamed. You should never be ashamed of bettering yourself. I don't care where you're at in life. You should never be ashamed of educating yourself or bettering yourself. And the first step is wanting to be better, and also admitting that you have a problem.
And you're gonna meet some really cool people. You're gonna meet some really cool people at your AA meeting or your NA meeting. Like you're going to meet people who have been in your shoes before you and can tell you a more comfortable way to walk.
It was lovely talking to you. We're going to talk again soon. All right, peace.
Peace.